Nadan Jasodhanandana Prajajanandana Prajajanandana Jamunatiravanam Jadi Jamunatiravanata Jamunatiravanam Jadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanandana Nandana Brajajanandana Jasodhanandana Brajajanandana Nandana Brajajanandana Jamunatiravanam Jadi Jamunatiravanam Jadi Tiravanata Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivijakacharya Astatarasatasi Simad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Somehow, by some arrangement of Krishna, the topic for the Chinese devotees yesterday evening is the starting point for today's topic. And it wasn't planned that way. It just kind of somehow worked out that way. Because we just finished chapter 14, Brahma's prayers, and now we're just beginning chapter 15. So what we'll be doing is reading the chapter summary from the BBT, and then reading the chapter summary from Bhaktisiddhanta, and then reading text 1 from chapter 15. And it's a lot of philosophy in that first text, so it's an important section. The beginning. This chapter describes how Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna, while tending their cows in the pastures of Vrindavan, killed Dhenukasura, enabled the residents of Vrindavan to eat the fruits of the tal trees and saved the young cow herds from Kalia's poison, revealing their boyhood or Poganda phase of pastime. Ram and Krishna were one day bringing the cows to pasture when they entered an attractive forest decorated with a clear lake. They began playing forest sports along with their friends. Pretending to tire, Lord Baladev laid his head upon the lap of a cowherd boy and rested as Lord Krishna helped relieve his elder brother's fatigue by massaging his feet. Then Krishna also placed his head on the lap of a cowherd boy to rest, and another cowherd boy massaged his feet. In this way, Krishna, Balaram, and their cowherd boy friends enjoyed various pastimes. During this day, Sri Damsubal, Stoka Krishna, and other cowherd boys described to Rama and Krishna a wicked and irrepressible demon named Dhenuka, who had assumed the form of a jackass and was living in the Talavan forest near Govardhan Hill. This forest was full of many varieties of sweet fruits, but fearing this demon, no one dared try to relish the taste of those fruits, and thus someone had to kill the demon and all his associates. Lord Rama and Lord Krishna, hearing of the situation, set off for this forest, to fulfill the desire of their companions. Arriving at Talavan, Lord Balaram shook many fruits out of the palm trees, and as soon as he did, the jackass demon Dhenuka ran swiftly to attack him, but Balaram grabbed his hind legs with one hand, twirled him around, and threw him into the top of a tree, thus slaying him. All of Dhenukasura's friends, overcome by fury, then rushed to attack, but Rama and Krishna took hold of them one by one, swung them around, and killed them, until the disturbance was finally finished. When Krishna and Balaram returned to the cowherd community, Yashoda and Rohini placed them on their respective laps, 6-year-old boys. They kissed their faces, fed them with finely prepared food, and then put them to bed. Some days later, Lord Krishna went with his friends, but without his older brother, to the banks of the Kalindi in order to tend the cows. The cows and cowherd boys became very thirsty and drank some water from the Kalindi, but it had been contaminated with poison, and they all fell unconscious on the riverbank. Krishna then brought them back to life by the merciful rain of his glance, and all of them, regaining their consciousness, appreciated his great mercy. So I got mixed up. The next is the Garga Samhita rendering that you heard last night. And the Garga Samhita rendering means, so just a little background. It's a book describing Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And the book is narrated by Garga Muni, the great Brahmin from Mathura. And he's narrating a discussion between Narada Muni and King Bahulashva, the king of Mithila. King of Mithila is asking about Krishna's pastimes. Narada is explaining. And there's lots of details. And the storyline is very similar, but you'll see there's some differences. It's liberation of Dhenukasura. One day, as Krishna, was herding the beautiful cows with Balaram and all the gopas, Krishna went to newly blossoming Talaban forest. Out of fear of an ass, Dhenuka, the Gopas did not enter that forest. Even Krishna did not enter. Only Balaram entered. Tying the blue sash at his waist, very powerful Balaram entered that forest to get its ripe fruit. Roaring fearlessly, Balaram, who was Lord Ananta himself, and whose strength had no limit, with both arms shook the tall trees and made many fruits fall. When he heard the sound of the falling fruits, the ass demon Dhenuka, who was very powerful, who was a friend of Kamsa, and who had been taking a midday nap, became filled with anger. Coming before the Lord to fight, with his hind hooves, Dhenuka suddenly kicked Balaram's chest and neighed, made a donkey sound. Balaram chased Dhenuka, quickly caught his hind legs, and with one hand playfully threw him into a tall tree. When that tree fell, it made many other tall trees nearby also fall. Oh, King of Kings! All of this was very surprising, the person being addressed again as King Bahalashva. Then that king of demons again stood up and angrily grabbed Balaram. Then Balaram suddenly grabbed Dhenuka, whirled him around, and, as one elephant throws another elephant, threw him for 8 miles. That's a translation for 1 yojana. 8 miles. 8 miles. Throw anything for 8 miles. When Dhenuka struck the ground, his head became badly wounded, and he fell unconscious. In a moment he stood up, and this time his body was filled with anger. When Dhenuka manifested a terrifying form with 4 horns, with his sharp and terrifying horns, he made the Gopas flee. When the boys fled, Dhenuka chased them. Angry, Sridham hit Dhenuka with a stick, and Subal hit him with his fist. Stoka Krishna whipped the powerful demon with a rope. Arjun and Ankshu threw him far away. Vishala and Rishabha kicked the demon. Tejasvi tried to strangle him. Devaprastha slapped him. Varutapa hit the great demon with a ball. Then Krishna grabbed Dhenuka with both hands, whirled him around, and threw him onto Govardhan Hill. By the force of this, the demon was unconscious for an hour. That's 3 times he's been thrown. Shaking off this form, the demon again manifested his original form. With his horns, the demon grabbed Krishna and carried him into the sky. Wow. Quite different version. 800,000 miles in the sky. They fought. Krishna, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, grabbed Dhenuka and threw him down to the earth. Good thing. That's pretty high in the sky. 800,000 miles. Not feet. Miles. 30,000 feet. 35,000 feet. 800,000 miles. Phew. His bones broken, the demon fell unconscious. Again, rising, the demon made a terrible sound with his 2 horns. Uprooting Govardhan Hill, Dhenaka threw it at Sri Krishna. Catching the hill, Krishna threw it at Dhenaka's head. The demon caught the hill and threw it again at Sri Krishna. Krishna caught Govardhan hill and threw it back to its former place. Breaking the ground with his horns, the demon charged Balaram, kicked him with his hind hooves, and roared. With that roar, the universe echoed and the earth shook. Then with both hands, powerful, Balaram grabbed the demon and threw him to the ground. His head broken, the demon fell unconscious. Then Krishna's elder brother, Balaram, punched the demon with his fist. Finished. With that punch, the demon died. Then the demigod showered flowers from the Nandana gardens. Too many. Leaving his body, Dhenaka manifested a splendid and handsome dark form, wearing yellow garments and decorated with a forest garland. Then a chariot filled with 100,000 of the Lord's associates, decorated with 1,000 flags, rumbled with 1,000 wheels, pulled by 10,000 horses, glorious with 100,000 chamras, yellow, studded with many jewels, 8 miles long, beautifully, traveling as fast as the mind, and decorated with many bells and tinkling ornaments, suddenly appeared. O king! The demon circumambulated Krishna and Balaram, and then, filling the sky of the directions with light, filling the circle of the directions with light, he ascended the chariot and went to Goloka, far beyond the material realm. So someone wanted to know, did he get liberated? It's pretty fancy liberation. We don't really get that kind of a fanfare for most people. When Dhenaka was killed, Krishna was surrounded by the cows, Balaram and the boys, who were all singing his glories. The king said, "O sage, why did he attain liberation? Who was Dhenukasura in his previous birth? Why did he get the body of an ass? Please tell me this in truth." Sri Narada said, "He was the powerful son of King Bali, who was the son of Virochana, and his name was Sahashika. One time he enjoyed pastimes with 10,000 women on Gandhamadana mountain. The sounds in that forest of the many musical instruments and ankle bells broke the trance of Durvasa Muni, who in a cave nearby was meditating on Lord Krishna." Now, normally he's not depicted as a Krishna Bhakta, but Narada's indicating this, at least in this case. Very thin, with a long beard, walking with wooden sandals, holding a stick, and glowing with flames of anger, Durvasa, whose curse, that's what it's supposed to be, whose curse makes the universe tremble, left his cave and spoke to Sahashika. "Fool, ass-like person, rise, become an ass, O demon, after 400,000 years. In the transcendental circle of Mathura, in the sacred forest of Talavan, you will attain liberation by Lord Balaram's hand." Sri Narada said, last verse, "Because he had given Prahlad Maharaj the benediction, 'Your descendants will not be killed by me,' Krishna reigned at Dhenukasura was killed by Lord Balaram's hand." And that's the Dhenukasura story. It doesn't give the beginning of the Kalya story. That's separate. So now that was the summary. Now we're going to read text 1. And there's a lot of pages for text 1. I hope you're ready to hear. Shukadeva Goswami said, when Lord Rama and Lord Krishna attained the age of Pauganda, which is 6 to 10, while living in Vrindavan, the cowherd men allowed them to take up the task of tending the cows. Engaging thus in the company of their friends, the two boys rendered the land of Vrindavan most auspicious by imprinting upon it the marks of their lotus feet. And here's the BBT purport. Lord Krishna wanted to encourage his cowherd boyfriends, who had been swallowed by the Aghasura and then stolen by Lord Brahma. Therefore, he decided to bring them into the palm tree forest called Talavan, where there are many delicious ripe fruits. Since Lord Krishna's spiritual body had apparently grown slightly in age and strength, the senior men of Vrindavan, headed by Nanda Maharaj, decided to promote Krishna from the task of herding calves to the status of a regular cowherd boy. He would now take care of the full-grown cows, bulls, and oxen. Out of great affection, Nanda Maharaj had previously considered Krishna too small and immature to take care of full-grown cows and bulls. It is stated in the Kartika Mahatmya section of Padma Purana, quote, the 8th lunar day of the bright fortnight of the month of Kartika is known by authorities as Gopastami. From that day, Lord Vasudeva served as a cowherd, whereas previously he had tended the calves, unquote. The word Padai indicates that Lord Krishna blessed the earth by walking on her surface with his lotus feet. The Lord wore no shoes or other footgear, but walked barefoot in the forest, giving great anxiety to the girls of Vrindavan, who feared that his soft feet would be injured. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, writes, the 15th chapter describes the herding the cows, Krishna's praise of Balaram, Krishna's playing with his friends, the killing of Dhenukasura, and protecting the cows from the poison of Kalya. Paragraph. After playing until the end of the 5th year, Krishna and Balaram were permitted to herd the grown cows. The first day of herding these cows is described in Kartik Mahatmya of the Padma Purana. We just read it. Previously, he was herding only the calves. They decorated the land of Braja with their footprints, which had the marks of flag and other auspicious symbols. This made Vrindavan extremely beautiful. Previously, since Krishna's feet were very small and soft, the impression of the flag and other symbols were very faint. However, now the 21 marks were very clear. This is indicated by the word ativa, or extremely. These marks made Vrindavan more beautiful than ever. Jiva Goswami writes, after playing in the 5th year, then Poganda age began. The activities continued in Braja alone, since it was most attractive. Krishna, for a long time, had the desire to herd the cows, along with Balaram, in order to perform pastimes in Vrindavan in a complete way. Out of affection, Nanda would not permit this on seeing Krishna's young age. Now, when he was older and strong, Nanda gave his permission for the two to herd the cows. They were expert at doing this. For instance, the phrase, quote, approved by the wise, unquote, means expert. Or the phrase can mean the two boys were permitted to take the cows and their calves. Though the calves were no longer taking their mother's milk, they could not bear separation from Krishna, and they followed their mothers to the forest. The bulls also followed, even though attempts were made to stop them. They came near Krishna and would not go without him to the forest. The two boys went together because of strong bond of affection in order to play together. They went with their friends. Previously, they were not allowed to herd the cows. The older cow herds personally did this. This is understood from 10:13:34 Bhagavatam. So this is chapter 15, referring back 2 chapters, chapter 13. Tata, and it gives the Sanskrit. Thereafter, the elderly cowherd men obtained great bliss from embracing their sons. This is when the cows were up on the Govardhan hill, and it's actually Krishna who was the calves, and Krishna was actually the cowherd boys. And so as the cows, seeing Krishna, started running down the hill, the cowherd men chased after the cows. Stop, stop, stop. But when they got to the bottom of the hill, they forgot everything, because they saw Krishna, their son, and just embraced him. So the men were herding the cows, and the boys were herding the calves. That was the point. Previously, Nanda himself herded the cows, since his son was too young, and it was not his occupation. Wanting his association, the elder cowherds joined him. Nanda went, and the cowherds joined the Nanda. They took care of the cows. Now when Krishna began herding the cows, boys of similar age who were suitable went with him. This happened the 8th Tithi of the waxing moon on Kartik, and it gives the quote from Padma Purana again. In serving the cows, the boys did not wear shoes, as was the custom of the cowherds. Therefore, his footprints appeared on the earth, which produced piety or beauty in Vrindavan by moving everywhere more than before. The land became beautiful. Ativa, more than before. And Sanatana Goswami's commentary is the final one for this evening's class. Very detailed. Tataha is an ornament of speech, meaning like thereafter. Or it indicates there was no delay in performing other pastimes after herding the calves. The two boys were served by the age beginning with 6 years, Poganda, suitable for revealing more rasa than the previous age. The pastimes of Poganda age took place in Braja and nowhere else. Mention of the word Braja indicates the great auspiciousness and sweetness of that place. That should be understood when the word Braja is mentioned later in the text as well. Paragraph. For a long time, Krishna and Balaram had desired to herd the cows as well as the calves in order to play in the forest of Vrindavan. Now herding cows was approved. Pashu palana sama tau. Seeing the young age of their children, Nanda and others had not permitted it out of their affection for the children. Now they permitted it when the boys showed more strength and were older. They were permitted by all the cowherds, or they were permitted by all the cows and the cowherds. Thus they herded the cows. Paragraph. The calves went with their mothers, since they could not give up association with Krishna, and were also attached to their mothers, though no longer drinking their milk. The bulls also followed after Krishna. They tried to approach Krishna, even though restrained by others, because bulls are big. They have big horns, and so there's this thing of wanting to protect Krishna from anything. But they couldn't stop the bulls. In the childhood pastime, in the early age, there's a whole section where it describes Krishna and Balaram were like really curious. Wherever they saw anything, they would want to touch that something. They would want to touch fire. They'd want to touch a snake. They wanted to touch the animal's horns. They wanted to touch the fangs of animals. And, the mothers were being very protective. So they had to constantly watch him. Those of you that have small children, because he was very playful and very curious. And that was just part of the rasa of parental affection for Krishna in that particular age. It was one of the focus points of that age. Now he's older, and think in your mind about bulls, how big they are. Sometimes they're really big horns. So they tried to check the bulls. They couldn't check them. They wanted to be with Krishna. Without Krishna, they would not go to the forest. Krishna and Balaram went together because they were not different from each other by great affection. The word Pashupalana also indicates that buffaloes and other animals also went. He went with his friends. Sakibi, Saha. That means they all desired to herd the cows at this time. That means those who were previously herding the cows now ceased from herding the cows. Krishna began herding the cows on the Kartik Shukla Ashtami. And quotes the same verse again. He did not wear shoes in order to give mercy to the earth, which suffered and cried for his appearance. Right? Mother Earth was appealing to Krishna to appear, so he's reciprocating. He's just doing things that reciprocate loving exchanges with his devotees, including Mother Earth. So he walked barefoot. He also did not wear shoes in order to reveal beauty, punyam, by the extraordinary marks of thunderbolt, ankusha, etc. Though Vrindavan was naturally beautiful, it now became even more beautiful because of those marks, ativa, appearing everywhere. It became more beautiful than Vaikuntha. So that's as far as we're going to go. Maybe I'll read one more section. Should I read one more section? This is continuing from Gopal Champu after the narration about Denuka. This is the herding the cows. Okay, so it's the next day the talks continued. So this is Garga Muni narrating the conversation between the two, Narada and the king. Now wait a minute. This is not Garga Samhita, this is Gopal Champu. Gopal Champu. What's Gopal Champu? Gopal Champu is during the 2 months after Krishna had killed Dantavakra. I think I better save this for tomorrow because of the number of pages. I'll just mention. Gopal Champu is Jiva Goswami's writing. And the Champu is a particular style of writing, which means sometimes it's this, and sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's something else. I mean, among the books that Jiva Goswami wrote, he wrote a book explaining how to compose a champu. Because there's a certain, like, literary requirement or standard or something like that. And so after Krishna had killed Dantavakra, that was the last of the demons, because Krishna his pledge to Vishnu made his pledge he would destroy the demons. So after destroying Dantavakra, Shishupal, then Dantavakra, his assignment or his pledge had been fulfilled. And so he put on, that was out, according to Jiva Goswami, it was outside the gate of Mathura. Jiva Goswami writes, even today there's a village named such and such where it bears the name of Dantavakra, where Krishna killed Dantavakra, outside the gate of Mathura. And so Krishna did a costume change. Instead of wearing a prince, because he wasn't the king, Ugrasena was the king. He was in the Yadu dynasty, he was a royal member, so he had royal garments, but he changed from his royal garments into his cowherd boy garments. Because although he was 125 years of age, he still looked like he was 16. So he entered Vrindavan. He made a promise and he fulfilled his promise. He went to Vrindavan. According to Jiva Goswami, he spent 2 months in Vrindavan. And there were multiple purposes, all of which were fulfilled. One of them was pacifying the residents of Vrindavan. There was, other things. He made arrangements so that the demigods could return to their demigod places. In other words, his pastimes were about to finish. So the demigods that had taken birth, or partial expansions of the demigods who had taken birth, were sent back to the heavenly planets. The eternal associates of the Supreme Lord were sent back to the eternal realm. And thirdly, the uppercut forms of those eternal associates became uppercut. And so the pastimes of Krishna continued in an unmanifest stage, because the manifest stage was over for Vrindavan. So while he was there during those 2 months, Jiva Goswami writes in Gopal Champu that Krishna was associating freely with everybody, and Nanda Maharaj was still, the king of the cowherds. And so there were gatherings every day at Nanda Maharaj's place, where 2 disciples of Narada Muni, they were introduced to Nanda Maharaj and to everybody, Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta, brothers, disciples of Narada, that were fully empowered by Narada to understand Krishna's pastimes in great detail. And so They gathered at Nanda Maharaj's place, and every morning until the evening hour, they would narrate Krishna's Braja Leela for the pleasure of all the residents of Vrindavan. They were hearing, as we're hearing, they're hearing. So we're hearing what they were hearing in Gopal Champu. So it's a very nice composition, literary composition of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, expressed by these two, Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta. So they're going to narrate this little pastime also of Krishna's beginning his pastime of herding cows in their own way of saying it. And they kind of, play off of one another. One says, and the other goes, wow, and then what happened? And then they say, and then, so there's a dialogue between them. And then from time to time, it's sung. Da-da-da-da, 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 da-da-da-da. And then it goes back to narrative. It's a Gopal. It's a Champu. Champu about the pastimes of Gopal, Krishna the cowherd boy. Very interesting. Very interesting. Jiva Goswami is quite amazing. Quite amazing. Okay, so that's an introduction to chapter 15 and the first verse of chapter 15. We're hearing that the external of the pastime is Krishna graduated. He went from kindergarten to first grade. He went from herding the calves to herding the cows. But, it was an esoteric purpose that was, for pastime purposes, more complete. His pleasure pastimes became more complete. And not that they're he was feeling insufficient. But, like I heard from the narration with the Chinese devotees, some feedback came from the Chinese devotees after the class. And they were saying, wow, he was really just playing. Throwing around Dhenukasura and, this and that, and cowherd boys, particularly this Garga Samhita description. It's not unclear, but it had somehow become more clear. They're just enjoying. That's what little boys do. But it was the enjoyment was amongst themselves. Krishna was enjoying their company. They were enjoying Krishna's company. They were enjoying together. And these are eternal pastimes. But as we described yesterday evening, or sometime, they're manifest in, it was the other evening. They're manifest when Krishna performs his earthly pastimes, but those same pastimes, before he turns 16 pastimes, are not manifest in Krishna Loka. And therefore, they really have a blast. I mean, the pastimes are going on in their unmanifest form. At least the bhava of those pastimes. But here it's more than, it's the actual thing. The actual pastime. There are different stages of spiritual consciousness. Most exalted is the appearance of Krishna's pastimes. So like this. Meditators can meditate. And when they're in meditation, they actually see the form of Krishna. But we learn this from Brihat Bhagavatamrita, from Gopakumar, that actually seeing the form of Madan Gopal and meditating in meditation, seeing the form of Madan Gopal, it's just not the same. So therefore, there's a natural eagerness, like, the gopis. When Krishna had gone out to the forest, their minds were fixed on his form, but they were always hankering to see his form. In their mind, they would see everything that he did all day long. They had like television or something. They had, their meditation was so absorbed. They weren't just practitioners. They were seeing what Krishna was doing as he was here and there, and they were singing about what Krishna was doing. And then he returned. And it was a festival when Krishna returned. So that's what that Krishna meditation is. It's meditation when seeing him, meditation when not seeing him, and hankering to see him again. And that it's one of the very profound or most profound features of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and the Lord Chaitanya's associates, Rupa Goswami and all the others. The anticipation of seeing Krishna is super excellent. Just hearing the other day, Prabhupada was describing, I don't know anything about who this person is, but Prabhupada said it 4 times in one lecture. Some lady had written a book who's, a Sahajiya lady, saying, Krishna came, Krishna comes, Krishna's tugging at my sari, and, all these licentious things. And Prabhupada was blasting this lady, saying the mood of love is this mood of separation. The Goswamis never spoke like that or wrote like that, but here in says brazen way. And people like it. They think, oh, she's some kind of special lady. Krishna does these things. But that's not the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He just, like Prabhupada, just rejected it altogether. It's not the mood of love. One doesn't go writing books about like that. Whatever they were experiencing in their spiritual form, the mood that was expressed always, consistently, was Hey Radhe Rajadevi Ke Chalalite Hey Nandasuna Sutta. Where are you now? Are you the side of Govardhan Hill by the river Jamuna? Where are you? Searching for Krishna, hankering for the sight of Krishna. So that hankering for the sight of, and like Gopakumar, and then eventually brings one to the place where there's at least a momentary glance, Krishna shows his form. It's an ecstatic jubilation. There's nice Sanskrit terms for all this. Spurti. He just shows himself. And one becomes stunned. Like Lord Chaitanya, with outstretched arms, runs to embrace Krishna and he disappears. So, this is the mood of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's the mood that arises from hearing. Because we're hearing, for a very long time, so many years, Krishna was gone from Vrindavan, and now the residents of Vrindavan are together hearing about the pastimes of Krishna when he's right there. He's right there. He's hearing with them. It's similar, it's not the same, but it's similar in Ramayana, when Love and Kush are narrating Ramayana, and Ram's in the audience hearing Ramayana, enjoying it. One particular Ramayana says, he was on his throne as Love and Kush were narrating. He was enjoying it so much he got off his throne and sat down with the audience, and they didn't even notice it because they were so much enthralled with the narration. He was enjoying as an observer the narration of the pastimes of Krishna is so wonderful. The performance of them and the narration of them. And, the hankering, at least in the more mature stage, the hankering to participate directly in Krishna's pastimes, serve him directly. It's not ordinary. But the opportunity for doing that by the sadhana practice is made through the chanting, through the hearing, through the worshipping, like deity worship. And one who has a proper understanding of each of those things, that's association with Krishna in a way that matches our sensory capacities and purifies our senses and elevates consciousness, so we're in association with Krishna. This sadhana bhakti process, we're dull, but the process is very powerful. Those potencies are there. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion on whatever you'd like to discuss. Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, you mentioned that Garga Samhita is a conversation between Narada Muni and King Bahulashva.
Yeah.
So just that conversation is recorded in the book as Garga Samhita. Is that why does it have the name Garga Samhita, Maharaj?
My understanding is limited. But my understanding is he's narrating it. He's narrating a conversation between Narada and King Bahulashva.
Garga Muni, you mean?
Garga Muni.
Okay. The same Garga Muni.
The same Garga Muni.
Okay.
So Maharaj, you mentioned in read in Garga Samhita said that Dhenagasura went to Goloka. So he don't have a devotion. So liberation I understand, but couldn't understand why, how come he went to Goloka? What was his qualification or?
His qualification is a recipient of Krishna's mercy. Krishna can bestow perfection on anybody. So what was the cause of Krishna bestowing that special mercy on Dhenuka? There's no need for a cause. He was the descendant of Prahlad Maharaj. The son of Bali Maharaj. Now, anyone that's there's lengthy description. Well, in one of the places found in Canto 2, Chapter 7, there's a series of verses. Canto 2, Chapter 7 is a list of incarnations, like Canto 1, Chapter 3, a list of incarnations. In Chapter 7 of Canto 2, the list expands when he's speaking about Krishna, Sukadev, speaking about Krishna. And one verse, he lists a whole long list of different demons killed by Krishna who achieved liberation. And specifically, others did not. Those who are killed by other forms of the Lord are not achieving liberation. Something else happens. Various things happen. But they achieve liberation because they're killed in the presence of Krishna. Krishna gave his mercy and they're liberated. Now there can be different kinds of liberation. And there are different kinds of liberation. And Dhenuka got the liberation that he got. We don't know exactly why, but being the great-grandson of Prahlad. So like we hear, when one engages in devotional service, how many generations before and after become liberated? Just by that. So how powerful was the devotional service of Prahlad? Anything else? You're the host. You go.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Maharaj, you mentioned that in the Gopal Champu it's described that Krishna returned to Vrindavan later, just before.
No, it's described about Gopal Champu. Gopal Champu is a book written by Jiva Goswami, and Jiva Goswami in other commentaries says Krishna returned. Now, when in the beginning of Gopal Champu, Krishna has returned. I'm just editing the language a little bit because language is important. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question was, so this is not there in the Srimad Bhagavatam?
No, it's not.
Because in the Bhagavatam, the only place where Krishna meets the gopis is at Kurukshetra.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, but I heard in some lecture, I don't know the like from where Maharaj was quoting that, but I think it was lecture by Gaur Govind Maharaj. So he said that when they met, like when Krishna met gopis at Kurukshetra, then the gopis brought Krishna back to Vrindavan, and that is one of the significance of the Ratha Yatra. So is that related to this? Okay,
not related. It's a different pastime. Now, yeah, I'll leave it at that. The pastimes of Krishna are without limit and ever expanding. Yes? That in principle we know. So, we also know Srimad Bhagavatam is our Amala Pramana. It's the topmost spotless evidence. The way by which we can know Krishna is superlative in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That doesn't mean anything that's not in the Bhagavatam. We just, like this detail, we just like relegate it to a second-class position. This is the mature realization of one of the principal acharyas in our disciplic succession, following behind Rupa Goswami. He assimilated everything that Rupa Goswami assimilated. And Rupa Goswami was given the fullness of Lord Chaitanya. We're going to be discussing it on the next weekend about Rupa Goswami. He got the fullness of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And how much is that? Mahovadanaya, personality of Godhead, Rupa Goswami achieved the fullness of all of that. And he passed it on to Jiva. So it's not creative writing. It's not in the Bhagavatam, but it's not creative writing. So like this passage that Gaur Govinda is describing, it's authoritative. He didn't make up, interesting. Sometimes speakers do, unfortunately. And we should be very cautious. I was about to say, sometimes devotees repeat those things that are not from proper sources. And that makes a lot of confusion. I'll give an example. I'll give a few examples. I'm just going over to the side in response to your question, but it's just refining why do we accept something, and why do we not accept another something as being authoritative about, especially when we haven't seen it directly in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. What's the criterion for evaluating these things? Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, Pancharatriki, Vidin, Vina, that's one of the standards we go by. Yes? You're familiar with that verse? There are, according to Jiva Goswami, there's not only just the three sources of verifying things, that is, direct perception, logic and reason, and Shabda, and best amongst them is Shabda. There's 7 other ones that are means of knowing things. And one of those means of knowing things is where something is just commonly accepted. Commonly accepted. In Vrindavan, there's some circumstances like that are just commonly accepted. I'll give 2 examples. There's many. One of them is in the place where Nanda Maharaj would worship, there are figures carved in stone. I'm trying to remember the name of those figures. How Balau. You've heard of that? No? How Balau. It's a common story that everyone in Vrindavan accepts. So it's a common thing that devotees will narrate. And there's by the place where, so there's a pastime that goes like this, the How Balau pastime. When it's in Krishna's childhood, and he and Balaram and the cowherd boys were playing. I mean, non-stop playing. By Nandagram. And Mother Jasoda was cooking. She sent Rohini, bring Balaram and Krishna. It's time for lunch. Rohini was coming. Krishna saw it, told his cowherd boys, friends, don't go. We're having too much fun. So she tried to persuade them, and they wouldn't come. Because Krishna, they were having too much fun. So Rohini went back and told Mother Yashoda, they won't come for lunch. I think you have to go. So Mother Yashoda went. And, she said a whole number of things. She tried this, she tried that, she tried the other thing. Nothing worked. Krishna was having too much fun. No, it's a competition of rasa. And he was too much absorbed in his friendship rasa. So she said, if you don't come, the How Balau will come and eat you. And Krishna said, what's How Balau? And she described big, ugly, big fangs, big claws. There's the How Balau. Let's go. And she started running. And Krishna said, what's a How Balau? And so, but it worked. He ran. Then something is a little bit different in different narrations of this. But next time, Mother they were busy playing. Krishna started running and crying. There, How Balau, the How Balau came. You should have seen Mother Jasoda. They were really big. And she tried to pacify him. saying, I just told the story. But Krishna didn't want Mother Yasoda's word to be untrue. He manifested how Balaus. He took her there and she saw it. She started running. And so to this day, there's carved in stone how Balaus by the side of Nandagram. And it's not a pastime that's in the Bhagavatam. So it's not in the, scripture, but people just accept it. So that's a certain kind of means of knowing something. It's kind of the, pramana. Atihiya is called. There's another one, another example. It's not in the Bhagavatam. But one time, this is the pastime, that's just a common pastime, that it happens on altars all over ISKCON. Listen. Krishna wanted to be with Radharani, and Radharani wanted to be with Krishna, but Jatila wouldn't let her. So Krishna was beside himself with anxiety. Radharani was beside himself with anxiety. One of the gopi friends of Radharani went to tell Krishna, she's in such anxiety, you got to do something. So Krishna, a light went on, and Krishna said, Subal, you go saying you lost a calf. And so Subal went, because Subal has complexion like Radharani. And Subal went and told Jatila, I'm looking for my lost calf. So, I don't trust you. You and Krishna, cowherd boyfriends. So you can go ahead and look, but, don't mess around. Something like that. So he went inside and he had a change of clothes. And he told Radharani, you can take the calf, place the calf across your chest, and you can leave, and you can just say, Mother Jatila, I found my calf. And you can leave. And then you can go be with Krishna. And I'll just stay behind dressed like you. And it's so clever pastime. And so on many altars around ISKCON, because I have photographs of it now, on that particular day that pastime was to have taken place, the temples have Radharani holding a calf. It's not in the Bhagavatam. And it's, it's Subal. It's not Subal, the pastime of Subal going and changing out with Radharani's place so she could be with Krishna. You follow? It's not in the Bhagavatam. But it's something that's commonly accepted and it's commonly narrated. And there's other examples. But there's some narrations that are just not anywhere. I had to mildly call appeal to one of the devotees that writes books. Don't make reference to those stories because, and he explained why he did. He did because, there's lots of people out there that recite all these things, and people like to go and hear people recite all those things, and so I sprinkle some of those things in my writings. I said, please don't do that, because people in ISKCON read your books, and they're going to grow up thinking that's the way it is. When you're doing it for a different purpose, to attract the broad audience, but don't attract the broad audience. Just give the purity. And he said, okay. But what's in my books, it's already in my books. It's too late, but I won't do it anymore. When publicly speaking and so on. So I'm elaborating because it's one of my, red buttons. Those that read and those that speak should be very careful about where's the source. And if it's in Valmiki Ramayana, for example, or it's in Srimad Bhagavatam, for example, that's the gold standard. Then there's other things that we're cautious. What's the source? So this reference that Gaur Govinda Maharaj made, fine. But it's not in the Bhagavatam. But they want it. It's in writings of our acharyas for sure. That was the mood. The whole of Ratha Yatra. The whole of Ratha Yatra is that mood. And is Krishna going to deny the mood of the residents of Vrindavan? Now, how and when and all those details, that's another thing. So now back to Gopal Champu. It's not in the Bhagavatam. But it's not, the Bhagavatam doesn't say it didn't happen. It's just not in the Bhagavatam. It has a certain limited number of verses. And our acharyas have the capacity to experience Krishna's pastimes directly. There's a lot of the writings of the Goswamis like that. And it's described how it happened. How did they find the places of Krishna's pastimes? That was an assignment. Rupa and Sanatan specifically. How did they do it? They didn't go on a creative writing spree. They had a capacity that Jiva Goswami describes. They became so absorbed in chanting of their mantras and the pastimes of Krishna per the Bhagavatam, the pastimes are revealed to them in their hearts. It's described by Bhaktisiddhanta right in Brahma Samhita, which is a English rendering of Jiva Goswami's commentary in Brahma Samhita in Sanskrit. Jiva Goswami writes, even at my time, there are persons that have this capacity, meaning the 6 Goswamis. They could experience things that weren't in the Bhagavatam, and they wrote them. So one has to be discriminating about what one hears. There's so many. The pastimes, the tax pastimes. You familiar with the tax pastimes? They're not in the Bhagavatam. The details. So they're not creative writing. They're realizing. And Krishna would perform those pastimes again and again. And so there's different descriptions by Raghunath Das Goswami. He's not going to, write an Alice in Wonderland story. But it's very detailed. Very charming. It's not in the Bhagavatam. Etc. The pearl pastime. You know that pastime? The pearl pastime. Krishna growing a pearl tree in his pearl garden. You know that pastime? You don't know that pastime. We'll narrate that pastime sometime. The plan is, because of the pandemic, the going to Vrindavan for a Vrindavan Yatra isn't going to happen. It's going to be a virtual one. And one of the things that I'm planning to do, is go to Radhakund virtually. And we'll narrate the pearl pastime. So tune in for the Kartik virtual yatra to Vrindavan. Here's another one. It happened near Radhakund. You know the story of the jackal? It's not in the Bhagavatam, but it's commonly known as Atihiya. Everyone knows it. And it's not in the Bhagavatam. But the compassion of Radharani for the jackal is, so charming. We'll narrate it. We'll see some pictures. I've over-answered your question. Something else in the room here? Or we're going to go online? Anything online? Yes?
Yes, 2 questions.
Okay.
This is from Sanjari Mataji. Guru Maharaj, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the different ways the residents of Dwaraka saw Krishna as he entered the city. 3 questions. First, were these forms influenced by their rasa?
Is his form inspired by rasa?
Influenced.
Oh, the devotees will see Krishna corresponding to their rasa.
Second.
It's not like, a material object where we see the material object. I mean, there's some bottles of water on the table across the room here. So one may see different, features, but it's still just a plastic bottles of water on the table with a certain color, tablecloth, etc. But so different persons are going to see it and describe it and experience it differently. Due to our different senses and desires and things like that. Rasa is a whole other dimension. Krishna actually shows form according to the inspiration of his devotee. Sometimes a 4-armed, sometimes a 2-armed, sometimes a 6-armed, sometimes, universal form, sometimes. According to the one sees, Krishna reveals according to the rasa of his devotee. And rasas are different. Next.
Second, if so, what mood were the devotees who saw him as a lightning bolt and similar items in?
What was the mood? That wasn't in Dwaraka, that was in Mathura. But it's the same point.
Yeah.
What was their mood? Fear.
It continues, it seems almost impersonal to see him in such ways.
Well, it's their mood. It's not. They're not bhaktas. The wrestlers were not bhaktas. Bhakta Chanura and Bhakta Mushika. They were not bhaktas.
So the third one is, and a little separate to the above, but still aligned to it. Do the residents in Vrija see Krishna
The residents where?
In Vrija.
Braja.
See Krishna in different ways as seen by the residents of Dwaraka, or do they only see him as Vraja Krishna, no matter what age he is in his pastimes with them?
Well, they have similar, the rasas are variegated, but they have a similar mood of intense love. So they see accordingly. And even his age changes, and they see his age changing, and their mood of love towards him changes according to his age. Just like when Krishna, is moving from 5 to 6, they see him differently. When Krishna starts to go out with the calves, Mother Yasoda has an anxiety attack. She has to be without Krishna for a while. But, mothers go through stuff like that. But, what to speak of transcendental mothers. So will she see differently? Yes. And Krishna is exhibiting pastimes to nourish the love of each of his devotees. But there's a general kind of love, and that's the love in intimacy that they have in Vrindavan. So don't over-intellectualize this one. Just appreciate there's diversity in love.
This question is from Sridhar Das. Guru Maharaj, sometime back, one of our head pujaris regarding the deity worship made a statement which is, we should make our offerings in loving and with feelings, but not in a sahajiya way.
I'm listening.
May I kindly know how to differentiate if a person is offering in sahajiya way or with feeling, because from external point both may look like they are doing service with some feeling.
Yeah. By external you can't tell.
Although I have an idea to differentiate between devotee and Sahajiya, I find the definition of Sahajiya difficult to explain to others. Please kindly help me to understand this.
Very simply, it's just artificial. Here's a litmus test. Exhibition of spiritual emotion that's very high, and patterns of behavior that are not consistent. Like sense indulgence, patterns of behavior that are not consistent with high spiritual emotion. Next.
This is from Shashireka Mataji. Maharaj, just curious to know that at one time there will be a complete annihilation. In that case, only Krishna will be there, not even any demigod.
Do you understand the question?
I think she is asking only Krishna will be there, not even demigods during.
Oh yeah, when there's the demigods are reconstructed after the partial devastation. There's a new set of demigods. The post is there, but someone else is occupying the post. Next.
Yeah, I think that's it, Maharaj, from here.
Okay. You had something? No? Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai.